Hi. Welcome to, I'm gonna call this Cosplay and Yap as like the placeholder name. I don't have a name for this series, I'm very underprepared. But basically what I thought I would do today, because I'm gonna be filming in Dazai later today, I thought I would maybe make a little bit of a long form video while I get into my cosplay makeup, show you guys what my process is, and then just yap a little bit along the way. I've wanted to make some long form content for a while, but I never really know what to do. So I thought this might be a nice place to start. Something that I really like talking about, but I never really have a place for in my normal videos, my short form stuff, is like the myths and mythos of the cosplay community. A lot of like misconceptions that people make quite early on in the community. I thought it might be fun to kind of dispel some of those myths and then just sort of talk through why they don't really work out in practicality, and I guess just kind of get to know you guys a little bit more, or at least let you guys get to know me a little bit more. So basically I'm going to be doing Dazai, and while I do that I'm just going to be yapping, just talking about general stuff and then explaining my process of how I get into cosplay. So I think this is going to be kind of fun. It's going to be something different. But yeah, I'm hoping to do kind of maybe more long form videos like this. But yeah, as I get into moisturizing my face, I will go into the first one. So the first myth of the cosplay community that I want to talk about is you always have to crimp your wigs. So this is something that a lot of people will say, that like in order to get a really good effect on your wig for cosplay, you need a crimper, you need to be crimping it beforehand to get volume to make it look good. Fucking hell, I'm red. Oh my god. But yeah, in order to have a cosplay wig that looks good, you have to crimp it. And that is a complete lie. That's a huge myth. Is every single one of my wigs is not crimped. I don't own a single crimped wig. That's a lie, actually. I do own one wig that has a crimper attached to it. And the reason for that is that I didn't style it. I commissioned it from a lovely, talented friend of mine, Eleni Cos, and they always crimp their wigs. But I personally do not crimp any of my wigs. It's not because I don't like crimping necessarily. I think it's very valid to crimp your wigs if you want to get that level of volume. I just personally can't be bothered to order a crimper, and I don't like the way that it looks. Like, I just don't like the crimp marks being anywhere near my wigs on my head, personally. I know that some people are very good at smoothing them out. I've given it a go before with one of my friend's crimpers and it didn't work. I was very bad at smoothing it out and I just didn't like the way it looked. Now, what some people may ask is how I managed to do that and have volume in all of my wigs, especially my long wigs, without crimping them. And that is because I back comb my wigs. I back comb my wigs and then I basically use heat, like a straightener, something of that realm. Once you've like back combed it all and applied heat to it, you just brush it all back out and you make sure to brush out where there's too much volume. But back combing, I find, gives more volume than crimping does. Yes, it might hurt your arm more, it might be a bit more of a tedious job, but it's still really like good. It's a very good method. It works wonders on the wig, especially if you've got kind of like a cheap wig. And it definitely, to be honest, it does hurt your arms a little bit more. But I've seen people genuinely swear up and down that you should never do this method, and that's wrong, because I do it for every single one of my wigs and I think it works like an absolute treat. So yeah, if you are obviously struggling, aren't sure what to do with your wig, or you don't want to buy a crimper or use a crimper, a very valid method is definitely backcombing. You don't have to do either of those. To be honest, there's a lot of really interesting methods in this community on how to give your wigs volume or make your wigs look good. I think that like defaulting to crimping is the only way. Crimping is the best way to get your wigs to look good. It's not always the case, but I just see people default to crimping is superior like way too often. And it does confuse me a little bit, because as someone that has never crimped a wig in my life, it's not true. I'm not trying to shit on anyone that does crimp their wigs, but I just think, like, especially even for long wigs, like backcombing is still a method, and people will straight up act like you cannot backcomb a long wig, which isn't true. And I wish more people would act like it is true. I look like a fucking egg. I've done my contour. I am now applying a little bit of blush on top of my highlighter. I don't usually do female characters because I feel like my face and my anatomy fits men a little bit better, twinks in particular. But I felt like I would try and do femme Dazai, because Dazai is such a signature of mine and I don't think I can really go wrong as long as I'm doing some variant of Dazai. So the second misconception or myth, I guess, of the community is that you have to know how to sew to have a good cosplay. That is absolute bogus. Take this from someone who learnt how to sew earlier this year.
Baby, you got something in your nose. Sniffing that K, did you feel the hole?
And has been doing cosplay for quite a while. I mean, to be fair, I say quite a while. The determiner of a while for people when it comes to cosplay is very different. I've been doing cosplay for about 3-4 years at this point, but my perception of the emphasis of sewing for cosplay is you don't have to know how to sew to make a good cosplay. The main argument that I would bring is a lot of cosplays you don't actually need to sew. So like we're talking like Bungo Stray Dogs, we're talking maybe Moriarty the Patriot, we're talking Death Note, we're talking you know, there's kind of cosplays where you don't need to actually hand make the outfit, you can just buy it somewhere or second hand it, or even closet cosplay. Yeah, a lot of people think that in order to have a good cosplay, you have to know how to hand sew an outfit, you have to know how to make something from scratch. And that's just not true. Like, a lot of people don't realize that you can alter your outfits in a lot of ways. They don't require you to sew to make it look good. So I always found it really strange how aggressively into the whole like sewing is key thing that, you know, the cosplay community has going on. I will say, like, sewing is a very important skill for cosplay. Sewing is a very fun skill, but it's like very long and tedious and very expensive. It's very expensive to sew a garment from scratch. I wouldn't encourage it if you're looking to do maybe cosplay on a budget, or you don't want to buy a sewing machine just to cosplay a very basic outfit. You know, I think a lot of people really understate the abilities of hot glue and adding glitter to things and accessorizing. Accessorizing is really big. Just adding like a small accessory to your cosplay can do so much for the way that it looks. Even just adding like a chain to a hat or like a corset to an outfit that doesn't typically have one can genuinely do such wonders for making your cosplay unique and making it look handmade, rather than having to sew the entire thing from scratch and then feeling completely worthless if you don't do that. You know, if we're talking maybe competitions, it's a little bit different. I think if you're trying to compete for cosplay, you're trying to get an award in any way for your craftsmanship, you should maybe learn how to sew. But even then, like, foam craft and cardboard are a thing, and I think learning multiple ways of creating cosplay is a lot more interesting than just going straight in with sewing and then basically thinking that sewing is the be-all end-all of cosplay skill. A lot of people like myself have done very well with cosplay without knowing how to sew a single thing, and you can store buy a cosplay, or you can closet cosplay and add accessories and gemstones and things and make it look really good. And too many people kind of forget that and are like, well, I can't sew, so I can't have a cool looking unique cosplay. I have to, you know, buy one, or I have to have money, and only cosplayers with loads of money can have good looking cosplays, when that's not necessarily true. As you can see from a lot of my cosplays in my videos, it's mostly just small accessories that really elevate the look and not necessarily big hand sewn masterpieces of outfits. I would say this works for like most characters, but there are obviously certain characters that you do need to buy a canon outfit for if you want to look like them. I think all of the characters from like Genshin Impact kind of come to mind when I think about this. Like, you can't really find that at the local charity shop or like on Vinted unless it's someone reselling their Doki Doki cosplay. Obviously this isn't like a one size fits all kind of situation where you can do every character like this, but there are a lot of characters that you really don't have to know how to sew, or even if you have very basic sewing skills, you don't have to fully construct a garment from scratch. You can hot glue things on. You don't have to buy, you know, the Doki Doki one. You can replace accessories and swap them out for like when you're using like a cheap version of a cosplay, and it can completely work. And people kind of really understate that fact, and I really wish people didn't understate that fact, because one of my favorite things about the community as a whole is just like how creative it is and how interesting so many of these cosplays are, and how people can be like super resourceful with like when they're given very little. So yeah, don't fall into the trap, I guess, of feeling really defeated if you can't master skills like sewing, or so, you know, skills like tailoring right off the bat in your cosplay journey, because those are very hard things to do, and sometimes you can get really frustrated and it can just be like an absolute nightmare to do. I see a lot of baby cosplayers being like, well, I can't ever cosplay like this person, you know, XYZ, because they know how to sew and I don't. And it's like, there are so many really big cosplayers that have such minimal sewing skills. I'm not gonna bring them up by name, but like, I know a few of them. and like none of them really know how to sew, and that's okay. I feel like I'm driving myself in circles, so I'm gonna like move on to the next point. The next point is the myth that you need to have a really extensive, really fancy setup in order to have really good cosplay content. So this one's not even remotely true. I'm living proof of this. Like obviously some cosplayers have really extensive setups, and I will admit a lot of the most popular cosplayers have these kinds of setup. Professional camera, a proper set, really good lighting, you know, everything's in HD. You can see like every pore on their face is visible, and it's absolutely terrifying. I will admit a lot of the most popular cosplayers do have that as their content, as, you know, something that elevates their content, and as much as I wish I could, quite a hard thing to acquire. But obviously a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that like that is the superior cosplay content, and if you don't have a setup like that, you're like amateur or you're not good enough, which isn't true at all. I only ever film with my phone. I don't have a professional camera, I don't have professional lighting, I just have a really cheap ring light that I got at fucking B&M. I don't know if there's an American equivalent to B&M, sorry for anyone who doesn't understand the reference to B&M. It's basically really cheap bargain stuff. So yeah, I basically have the cheapest of ring lights. This is my mirror currently. I'm filming in front of a fucking makeup mirror from like IKEA. I don't have a good background, I don't have anything fancy or extensive anywhere in my content, if I'm honest with you. And even when I film at cons, it's like I just have this really shitty selfie stick, and that's pretty much it. I feel like my content's pretty good. I feel like people do still enjoy my content, and people can enjoy lots of content where you don't actually have a very good setup. It's actually one of my favorite things about cosplay. Bro, this makeup looks so fucking ugly. I hate doing feminine makeup. I hate it. Hate. It's the worst thing in the world. I absolutely despise doing female characters because I think it just looks so fucking bad. I hate female characters on me in particular. I just think they look really fucking ugly. I remember doing Caitlyn from Arcane and just thinking like, oh, I look like a fucking boy in a dress. I'm like that fucking David Walliams book. This looks arse. Oh my god, this looks so bad. Side rant, I look so bad in female cosplays. I hate them so much. I will never do female cosplays, like ever to con especially. Like I'm just too good at doing like twink men. This is how bad I am at female cosplays. I literally got like distracted from my point for like half an hour trying to figure out how the fuck to fix my lipstick. But yeah, you don't have to have a HD setup if you want your cosplays to look good. That's just complete bogus. Nobody needs a stupidly big camera in order to make themselves look good in a costume. So don't, I guess, like fall for the lie that you need to have the most prime setup ever, or that you need to like have some way to hack the algorithm. I have not been algorithm hacking for my entire time in cosplay. I had like 2 viral videos and then everything was fine after that. But it's like people will act like there's this way that you can hack the algorithm and make everything bend to your will, and you can't. Surprise, surprise, that's not how it works. But yeah, you don't need a huge setup. Don't let anyone tell you that you need like a ridiculously big camera in order to make everything look good, because you don't. Oh, okay, I think making it shiny really helps. Adding some lip gloss fixes everything. The fourth lie that I want to talk about that the cosplay community has kind of created is the fact that you have to have a canon cosplay for it to be a good cosplay. Sorry. We're gonna deal with a bit of a lighting change while I put all of my makeup away. You don't need anywhere near a canon cosplay in order to do well when it comes to the cosplay. A lot of the time, actually, we hopefully should start doing this more, but we celebrate like weird cosplays or cosplays that don't quite fit. You can cosplay as any version of the character that you want. This can be like a casual cosplay. You can put on a hoodie and walk around a con in said hoodie if you want, just whatever you think the character would wear. And you could do what I do and wear something that the character would absolutely never wear. I'm like known for doing cowboy Dazai or just these ridiculous versions of Dazai that no one's ever heard of before. And it's fun. Like too many people get so focused on doing whatever they think that other people will like for cosplay that they start forgetting to do cosplay just for themselves as a hobby for fun. Like I definitely used to do that, especially when I was big into being Has-Been Hotel cosplays. I used to start doing cosplays that I didn't really like doing just because I was like, oh well, it looks more canon and people will like it, yada yada yada. And like to be honest, some of my most popular cosplayers are the ones that are unique and are the ones that don't particularly fit what the character would actually wear. You know, I add a lot of drag elements into my cosplay. I like to add a lot of glitter and gemstones and things that are not present in the canon design of the character, just to add some like personal flair, because I feel like it's my signature. A lot of people finding their signature style for cosplay comes from that too, is just experimenting with things outside of canon. So there are so many things that we wouldn't have in this community if people just always stuck to whatever the canon design of that character is, or if people always prioritized looking exactly like the character. You know, it all kind of comes back to as well the fact if anyone can cosplay. If you get really hyper focused on, you know, things looking exactly like the character, or critiquing cosplayers for not looking exactly like the character, you get into the point of like overly criticizing people who don't just naturally look like the character, which obviously is a whole can of worms that goes in a very negative direction. So I think people really need to just remember that these characters are not real. There's no correct way to cosplay a character. As long as you're doing it in a respectful and kind manner, then you should be fine. Like, don't come out here and start having a go at people for wearing the wrong wig, or, you know, putting glitter, or wearing a necklace and having 7 face piercings that character wouldn't typically have. That's unique to them, and I like when cosplays are not just a wall of the same kind of person. Especially because the most popular cosplayers kind of all look the same, in like a mean way. But like, you notice that like a certain type of person will get to the top of the food chain when it comes to the cosplay community. That's because people have this, you know, prioritizing looking just like the character thing. I think it's kind of boring. You know, to each their own. I prefer cosplayers that have a little bit of flavor. You know, as long as you're not like appropriating someone's culture or changing something fundamental about the character or doing something offensive. I think anyone should be able to cosplay any character however they want, whether it's because they're wearing a wig made of yarn, or their outfit is completely bedazzled from head to toe, or they're dressed like a cowboy when that character has never dressed like a cowboy before. I think we should just be like in agreement that all cosplay is valid, and then just kind of stick to that agreement. It sounds like something that should be very simple, but unfortunately it's not to a lot of people. And as we kind of come to the end of me getting into cosplay, the last kind of thing that I wanted to talk about that is sort of like a common misconception in the community is that you have to have like a bunch of skills in order to have a good cosplay, just straight off the bat. But there's like a massive thing with impatience in this community, and I myself am a huge victim of this. A victim or perpetrator. I'm a massive perpetrator. I am a huge perfectionist, and I want everything to be perfect all the time, or I'm gonna kill myself. I always found it really, really hard when I couldn't catch on to something really easily, especially with something like sewing, or like kind of a long-term skill in cosplay, like wig styling. And the thing is, like, a lot of people think you have to be really good at all of these things just the moment you start cosplay, which is not a very good way to kind of see yourself. Like, people spend all of their time comparing themselves to everyone else in the community, especially when those people in the community have been in that community for a really, really, really long time, and that's why they've learnt these skills. And it's like, of course you're not going to have that level of skill that everyone else has, because everyone else has been doing this for like 6 years. Like, my wig styling and my makeup and my cosplay and all that, it still has room for improvement, and it was not the way that it is now when I first started cosplay. There were some interesting stages for me. A lot of people jump into it and then they get really pissed off when they're not immediately really, really good at something. And people have like a tendency to forget that these skills are learned. Like, it takes a lot of time to be good at something like this. Like, it takes practice, and there's a reason why people commission wigs. It's because they've spent so long mastering their craft that they now want to help other people achieve that without having to learn by hand how to craft their own wig when they're new to the community. You even see it, unfortunately, with a lot of people getting bullied online for just not having immensely good cosplay skills like a few months into learning how to cosplay for the first time, which sucks. Like, I hate that this community has that problem. I wish we fucking didn't have that problem, because I hate when like I see someone who's just getting into a hobby, who's just really enjoying themselves, and they're being given a really hard time because everyone's like, why aren't you really good at sewing and handcrafting and cosplay and makeup and all of this stuff, like straight out of the gate. It's like, calm down. You don't need to be good at all this stuff. You just need to be having fun. That should always be rule number one. It's not a job, it's not an obligation, it's a hobby. I don't care if some people make money from it. It's a hobby. And it comes with time, especially. People are very impatient in this community, and people don't realize that you need to take your time to learn these skills. You can't just expect to be good at it right out the gate and then get annoyed when you're not good at it, like I do. You know, give people who have spent ages learning these skills their credit, because it does take time. You know, there's a reason why people who've been doing it for years look so good when they do it, and it's because they've been spending so long honing this craft. It is a skill. Can we just appreciate how busted my Dazai wig is? Like, this shit is so messy. It's just been in a bag and I just can't, I can't be bothered to style it. I literally have to restyle it every time I get it out of that fucking bag, and I'm not doing it tonight. I'm not doing it! But yeah, people get really upset when cosplay doesn't meet their expectations immediately, or when they aren't gratified by learning a lifelong skill in like 2 minutes. You tend to get bullied a lot if you're towards the less knowledgeable end of the spectrum, because it puts people off of beginning cosplay, or at least continuing it until you reach the point that your idols are at. Like, the people who you idolize in cosplay, they've taken their time to get there. Like, no one just pops out of the womb really good at wig styling, unless you're maybe like a many wigs. I can't. I want to know how to style wigs like that. Please teach me. But yeah, it's like there's a reason why a lot of the people who are at the top of cosplay have been doing it for a while, or at least have some kind of experience. Maybe they went to fashion school so they know how to sew, or maybe they've been just doing something like this, like maybe makeup art for a really, really long time. So they've honed that skill, and now they're able to use that skill to utilize for their cosplay. But yeah, we all need to learn to be, I think, maybe a little bit more patient and just kind to ourselves at this point. Like, don't beat yourself up because you don't know how to create an outfit from scratch. Don't think that you're like a really bad cosplayer simply because you don't know how to do a full face of twink boy makeup the first time you've ever tried it. Like, the whole fun of this community is that we get to learn from each other and we get to hone our skills together and like teach each other really interesting things about how to do the things that we do together. And like, you know, even if someone's gonna gatekeep that knowledge, like just go and learn it from someone else. But yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of my little talk about myths and just general misconceptions that cosplayers have, especially new cosplayers. I don't know if this has been entertaining or not. Hopefully it's been at least a little bit entertaining. If not, then maybe I'll never do a video like this again. If you guys want to see more of this kind of content where it's just sort of me getting ready, being chill and having a chat, maybe I'll do more videos like this. I think I just like yapping to the camera, and I like getting the opportunity to do that, and you guys give me the opportunity to do that, so these pigtails are so fucking big. They're so heavy. Yeah, I'm gonna go film some content, so thank you for watching, have a nice day, fuck off.